Happy Wednesday, UnWoke Nation. I'd like to welcome you to episode 122 of the UnWoke Show, where free speech is welcome, all soaps are on the table, and your boys Rich and Tim are here to bring you the latest and greatest for your entertainment, baby. I'm your host, Rich, along with my co-host, Tim. How you doing, Tim?
Oh, great, Rich, man. Glad to be back, guys. Talking with the UnWoke Nation tonight. Guys, as we always do, we're going to do our normal housekeeping. Guys, if you're wanting to tell your friends about us, please do. And you can tell them where they can find us. We are actually on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Listen Notes, Podchaser, Boomplay, Good Pods. Guys, we are on all the major podcasting platforms. Tune in, check us out. Plenty of great content for you to download and listen to. Or you can reach us directly at feedback@unwoketheshow.com. Again, that is feedback@unwoketheshow.com. And tonight we're kicking off things. The Supreme Court's been busy this session. And so tonight's episode is Trans Rights on Trial, how the Supreme Court just changed everything. Okay. Now, here on the UnWoke Show, we have done multiple stories on transgender athletes. I think we even talked a little bit about gender-affirming, local governments paying for prison inmates to have sex changes. Okay. And after, doing some research and looking at this, it's true that the court is definitely loaded from a conservative standpoint, but the court has been ruling in favor of the right and their conservative mantra. The Supreme Court upheld a Tennessee ban on youth transgender care. Okay. The court let Trump pass or prevent transgender individuals from serving. And there have been cases on school sports bans. Okay. And we have covered that.
Yes, we have.
Right. Previous episode, go check out Trans Crazy America, where we talk about that. So, we're getting into what I would consider the culture war, if that's what you want to call it. So the U.S. Supreme Court's latest term was bursting with fodder for Americans' culture wars, few more so than 3 cases touching on transgender rights. The court, powered by a 6-3 conservative majority, in each case ruled against transgender plaintiffs or their interests more broadly. Okay. So as I alluded to earlier, the court on June 18th upheld Tennessee's ban on medical treatments for minors with gender dysphoria. Okay. The court on May 6th granted Republican President Donald Trump's emergency request to let his ban on transgender people in the military take effect. And then on June 27th, it permitted parents to keep their children out of class when storybooks with LGBT characters are read. In fact, we did a story. Was it in New Hampshire?
I
think it was. I'll have to go back and search the archives. But it was a story on faith-based.
Yes, I remember.
With regards to education, I believe the short take on that episode was parents were pulling their kids out of discussions about LGBTQ or transgender, and they were pulling their kids out of class based on religion.
Right.
Okay. So we're starting to see a clear theme here,
right,
if you will. Naturally, the 3 liberal justices dissented in all 3 cases. If you were gay or transgender, said John Malcolm, a legal scholar at the conservative-leaning Heritage Foundation think tank, the rulings represented clear losses. Okay? These outcomes, along with other decisions that split along ideological lines, to back restrictions on abortion provider Planned Parenthood and limits on access to online pornography show that the majority's willingness to rule on polarizing matters as the court continues to steadily push U.S. law to the right. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have there's absolutely zero argument to be made that from a law perspective, just what that paragraph said, that everything is being pushed to the right.
Yeah, and I understand that, there's a good portion of people who have been vetted to be justices, where so obviously some from many different presidents, but of course in the recent one being with Donald Trump, it's like, yeah, they tend to be a little bit more kind of Republican leaning. Obviously, one of the main people who have the longest tenure is actually Justice Clarence Thomas, who's been there for practically since like the 80s, I think, and doing that or so. But at the same time, I think maybe it's like you're not getting a lot of backlash where just because, a lot of the American people just kind of said it's like some of the topics that we have covered in the past, where just people say, well, no, we don't want these certain things. And therefore, it's like, you're not hearing as much about it. But as you and I know about the government and how, the branches of government actually work, where so the judicial system's purpose is basically to be able to interpret the laws and not make them.
Right.
And I think that's where we're just getting a little bit on the what are they truly doing and make sure that they're doing what the branch is supposed to implement.
We did a story on black fatigue.
Yes.
Okay. And you're probably saying, well, what's that got to do with transgender? Well, the connection I'm making here is, we've been through black fatigue. We're definitely going through the DEI / transgender fatigue.
Right.
And I think you saw that just in the presidential election results.
Right.
Right. The red wave that we have mentioned multiple times. And really that whole movement and the movement I'm referring to again as transgender really started back under Obama.
Right.
Okay. This, hey, everybody, let's get along. You do your thing. You're not bothering anybody else.
Yeah,
right?
It was definitely a major switch from the social standpoint that the president had when he initially was running as president before his second election, and then once he was interviewed on ABC, because I remember watching it, and that's where it was a major switcheroo where people were just like, oh wait, it's like because I think he ran a lot on there being a lot of urban Christians and that type or so, and then just decided I think in his second term it's like yeah, I'm gonna kind of change my mind about that, and I think so I agree. I think that's where it kind of really started where. In the past where people really didn't talk about that topic on a national scale.
No, it wasn't. I can't remember even in Obama's first term.
No, not
or even on the election trail.
Yes, and that was my point.
Right. Anything in his first term where anything like that had been talked about, or even in the previous administration, right? Under Bush.
Right.
There was nothing. We were coming out of 9/11. America was solely focused on just wanting to go and kick ass and get retribution, right?
Right.
So then Obama policies progressed under Biden, for sure. And I think that's where the bulk of what I would consider steamrolling in terms of transgender rights and DEI, that's really where things, caught fire, no pun intended. And America was saying, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because people were trying to figure out how does this address issues such as the economy or the market or immigration, right? Or abortion or anything like that, right? And then we saw it during when Kamala Harris was running for president, how they went even farther
Oh gosh.
left. And again, that she ran on abortion, she ran on LGBTQ rights. And I remember seeing a statistic, and I would have to dig it up, of like some 65% of America was like, no, this has nothing, this is not helping our country in terms of jobs, unemployment, immigration, this had absolutely nothing to do with that, right?
And I think that was part of what the issue was, where I think it's like, and you would probably hear a lot more people, and probably a lot of people in the aftermath of that election, where a lot of people were trying to say, it's like, look, the Democrats are in a situation where they are truly not listening to the American voter. And the thing is that they paid dearly for it. Like I said, it wasn't just, it wasn't just Trump winning, by just a couple points, where it's like it was a complete landslide in what was going on. And I think from the moral perspective, I think it was a lot of they pretty much were counting, as in the Democrats, they were pretty much counting on the minority vote being there. While they're dealing with the minority, particularly the minority black vote, they were trying to count on there being a Hispanic vote because of all the immigration coming on. While Congress was still trying to figure out ways to make illegal immigrants be able to be voters, and also and I think it's like, I think they really got away from really wanting to know what Americans think. But, they proved it once that Super Tuesday came up.
Oh, yeah, that was a woodshed moment for sure. So, these cases that we were just talking about, according to Malcolm, also showed that, at least in litigation involving governmental policies toward transgender people and minors more generally, the court will cut a lot more slack, to judgments made by legislatures. The Tennessee case, for instance, involved a measure passed by the Republican-controlled state legislature that challenger said violated the Constitution's 14th Amendment of promise of equal protection. Okay. I don't know how, gender-affirming care or anything would fall under that. The court, which issued the final rulings of its 9-month term last Friday, again, this is going back a little bit, agreed on a Thursday to hear another major dispute involving transgender rights during its next term, which begins in October. Okay. The justices will decide the legality of Republican-backed state laws banning transgender athletes from female sports teams at public schools, taking up appeals from West Virginia and Idaho defending the measures. Okay. Right. So far, Trump has passed multiple executive orders outlining that, DEI is done. We've had enough, right? He's
on a federal level. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Going so far is to declare, which to me still blows my mind, that there's only two genders, male or female.
That was a shock for me too.
To think that we, and you and I have talked about this at length in our country, where we actually have to say.
Yeah, or the fact that you just have to ask.
I agree.
Sit there and go like, is that a guy or is that a girl? Or so the fact that it's like, where, didn't seem like there was a problem for several 100,000 decades. I'm just saying.
Yeah. The court often has been battleground for culture war issues. The addition in 2020 of conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the last of three Trump appointees from his first term as president, gave the court its current ideological makeup. Okay. Since then, conservative priorities have won big in rulings rolling back abortion rights, okay, widening gun rights, that's true, and expanding religious rights and rejecting race-conscious university admissions policies.
Right, affirmative action.
Affirmative action, which that in itself, again, you and I have talked about.
We did a show on it.
Yeah.
I know you, it's like you were asking, me being a black man, is like how I felt about it. And I felt like, yes, at one point, I think it was something that we needed. I just think nowadays it's like it's not needed as much. And so, like I said, I'm sure a lot of people out there who are libtards will sit there and say, "How could you say that? You're supposed to be a black person." Like, it's like, guys, when I went ahead and I put out my application for college, I made sure where I was not going to work. I want people to look at me and look at my grades and what I could do, and that's how I got into schools.
Well, yeah, we've had a good philosophical debate, even in the professional space, right? You got to hire X number of minorities. Well, if you're going through the interview process and you're one of, let's say, 25 candidates, and then you get narrowed down to 10 or 5, you're not going to know. Generally, you're not going to know who the other candidates are, right? If you lose, generally speaking, you're not going to know whether you lost to a Hispanic,
right,
a black person, or some other. Now, you're not going to know, right?
Right. Unless
somebody gets in and they become a whistleblower and blow it on HR, right?
Right. Exactly. And you would think if that's the case where any company would sit there and say, like, yeah, we're not going to let you know where, because, that's a discriminatory case waiting to happen.
Absolutely. The justices are not umpires in this war. They are cultural warriors.
Cultural warriors.
Let that sink in for a second. Cultural warriors.
Due to the fact that you're supposed to be bipartisan.
Well, Trump has politicized the court. I don't think that's a non-debatable fact. The military, in some form or other, has been politicized. The Treasury that has been in the news has, in some capacity, been politicized when every other past sane president has respected, that those specific groups have remained independent, out of politics, right? And so look at the legal system, the FBI, the DOJ, right? All weaponized in some capacity, all now politicized, when all of those entities are supposed to be independent thinking, acting on their own, free from political pressure. And that's just not the case now, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like just using that, like, what tools do we have, depending on what president is in there, or what kind,
To liberals, the court has become a place to cut our losses there rather than make progress, said Case, who specializes in the law of rights and equality. This term's ruling suggests that the target is not just transgender rights, but the whole network of rights of liberty and equality when it comes to sex, gender, and sexuality. Okay. I think there's a point to be made there. Okay. What was it? Harvey Milk back in, was it the 50s? The first, I guess, what, gay
activist that became mayor?
Was it mayor? He was in
San Francisco.
Yeah, it was San Francisco.
Right.
Did he become a U.S. senator?
I'm not sure. That's what I don't know.
There was a naval ship that was named after Harvey Milk that had just been renamed to something else. I'd have to go back and find it, right? But you can see the wiping out of.
Yes, he. According to this UnWoke Nation, he was the first openly gay man to be elected to public office in California.
Okay. Okay. So, is it a war? That's a strong word.
Is it a war against the trans? Is that's what you're kind of?
I think.
Or is it a war against, like, the American people? I mean, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as there's a segment of the American population, okay, that fall in that conservative category. Okay. Throughout our history, we have seen, well, going back to our history, initially, America itself was fairly conservative. Okay. And then you saw the 40s, 50s, 60s, right? You had women's rights. You had Martin Luther King going on. So you saw this changing, this slow progression in America.
Right.
Okay. And then fast forward really to Obama, who I would say really ushered in this whole notion of kumbaya, same-sex marriage, same-sex rights, and then it being pushed even farther right again with gender-affirming care for young adults, kids, right? And America said, hey, wait a minute. No. Enough of the inmates running the asylum.
Yeah, and I think I think that's what it kind of came to, so much going on, where especially in the last couple of years, where it just seemed like everything was kind of compounding. So and
it was a snowball effect for sure. I would agree with that.
It's like, just like there's just new stuff and people trying to make a big deal out of this thing or come up with this particular word or whatever the case may be, and it's kind of like, it's like, this is just too much, and it's not making any sense which obviously it turned out to be for most American families.
Now, there's one exception to the recent trend, and that was in 2020, when conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch, 4.5 months before Barrett joined the court, in which it decided that U.S. law protects gay and transgender employees from workplace discrimination.
Okay,
so there's a nod to the LGBT community as well as transgender folks, right? But then they swung back the other direction, and I'll leave it at this. Again, we talked about the Tennessee law, right? The Tennessee law upheld by the court bans gender-affirming medical treatments such as puberty blockers and hormones for people under the age of 18 experiencing gender dysphoria. The hey, what am I thing, right?
Right.
The court's conservatives rejected an argument that the measure unlawfully discriminated against these adolescents based on their sex or transgender status. And the last point I'm going to make here is gender dysphoria is the clinical diagnosis for significant distress that can result from an incongruence between a person's gender identity and sex assigned at birth.
That sounds like a mouthful there, right?
Assigned at birth, as if it's a check mark. And we're either going to go boy, or we're going to go girl, or we're going to go confused.
Yeah, we're probably going to go with latter, and if you learn to correct this, being able to say, okay, check the kid's pants. Come on now. I mean, this is just common sense.
Well, remember generally the male sperm count generally determines.
Right. Exactly what it's like. Yeah. So you're trying to tell me some.
So is it the kid's fault, or did dad pass on, his own sense of lunacy?
Right. Exactly. So and that's the thing about it. You're listening, to all these things, what they want to call, choices and all this stuff. It's like, okay, you know what? Take a doctor who actually knows what he's doing. So like, okay, that is obviously a boy.
Yeah.
It's simple stuff, but this is what you were talking about before. It's just so many people trying to come up with this idea of trying to correct all this, that, and the other, which only just adds more to the confusion of everything.
Yeah. UnWoke Nation, we'd love to get your feedback on this story, guys. You can reach us directly at feedback@unwoketheshow.com. Again, that is feedback at unwoketheshow.com. Rich, a pleasure as always. And remember, folks, stay unwoke.
See you next.